I want you to think about the last time you came home after dark. You probably believed you were alone, but what if someone knew exactly when you'd leave, exactly which road you'd take, exactly what time you'd arrive home? Not because they guessed, because they'd been watching, learning your routine, night after night. The terrifying part is most people don't realise they're being watched until it's already too late. Tonight's story isn't about being chased, it's about something far more disturbing. Discovering that someone has quietly memorised your entire life while you never noticed they were there. This is my story. I used to believe that if something terrible happened to you, you would know. That there would be a moment, a point where your instincts would take over and tell you that something is wrong and you need to leave. But that isn't always how fear works. Sometimes fear arrives quietly. Sometimes it looks completely ordinary. A car parked across the street. A familiar face in an unfamiliar place. A small detail that doesn't make sense. You usually ignore the first signs because you don't want to believe that someone is watching you. You don't want to believe that you've become someone else's interest. My name is Maya, and this is the story of the months I realised someone had memorised my life. I was 29 when this first started. At the time, I was working night shifts as a nurse at a small hospital outside the city. I didn't choose nights because I loved them. Actually, I hated them at first. There is something unnatural about driving to work while everyone else is going home. You see families eating dinner through their windows, people walking dogs, children getting ready for bed, and you're heading into a building where the lights never turn off. But after a while, you adjust. Night workers become their own little world. You know the security guards, you know the cleaners, you know which vending machine steals your money, you know which hallway light flickers, even though maintenance has fixed it 5 times already. The hospital at night becomes familiar, almost comforting. I started working nights after my mother became sick. It gave me flexibility. I could visit her during the day, work overnight and still pay my bills. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was mine. I lived alone in a small apartment, about 15 minutes from the hospital. Every day was almost identical. I would wake up around 3 p.m, make coffee, feed my cat, leave home at 6:20, stop at the same petrol station, buy the same coffee, arrive at work at 6:50. My shift started at 7. After 12 hours I would leave. Same entrance, same route home, same routine. Looking back, I realised something. A routine feels safe because it belongs to you, but a routine can also become a map. The first time I noticed the car, it was barely worth mentioning. It was a rainy Monday morning, the kind of morning where the sky never becomes fully bright. I was walking from the hospital entrance to my car when I noticed a dark blue sedan parked across the road. The engine was running. Someone was sitting inside. They weren't doing anything suspicious, and it didn't look like they were trying to hide. They were just sitting there. I remember thinking, they're probably just waiting for someone. That was it. I got in my car and drove home, and I forgot all about it. A few days later, I saw it again, this time near the petrol station where I bought my coffee. The driver was an older man, maybe late 40s or early 50s. When I walked out with my coffee, he looked away. I noticed, but I didn't feel scared. I felt uncomfortable. There's a difference. Fear comes when you know something is wrong. Discomfort is when your brain is asking questions you don't have answers for. Then came the first thing I couldn't explain, the coffee. I walked into the petrol station one morning after work. The cashier looked and smiled. "Your usual?" I said yes. She turned around and grabbed my coffee, and then she paused. She looked confused. She said, "That's strange." I asked, "What's strange?" She pointed at the cup. My colleague already made it. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. The coffee was sitting there, ready, exactly how I ordered it. I asked who ordered it. She said, "The man who comes in sometimes." I asked, "What man is that?" She looked towards the window. The blue car was parked outside. That was the first time I genuinely felt uncomfortable. Not because someone bought me a coffee, because someone had noticed something about me. Something small, something personal. My routine. I started changing things. Not dramatically, just little things. different parking spaces, different routes home, different coffee shop. But every time I changed something, the blue car appeared eventually, not immediately, not enough that I could prove anything, just enough to make me question myself. I told my co-worker Sarah. She was one of the few people who worked the same shifts as me. I expected her to tell me I was imagining things. Instead, she asked, "Has he ever spoken to you?" I said no. "Has he ever threatened you?" No. "Has he ever followed you directly?" I hesitated. No. Sarah looked at me and said, "Then write everything down." So I did. Dates, times, locations, everything. After a few weeks I noticed a pattern. The car only appeared on nights when I worked alone. Never when Sarah was there. Never when there were extra staff. Only when I was by myself. I reported it. At first I thought the police wouldn't take it seriously, but to my surprise they did. They checked the car registration. The owner was a man named David. He lived only a few miles away. No criminal record. No history of harassment. When officers spoke to him, he admitted he knew who I was. That scared me more. He said, "I know her because she works at the hospital." Technically that was true. A hospital is a public place. People notice staff. But then he said something strange. He said, "She needs to be more careful." The officer asked, "Why?" David didn't answer. After that, things changed. The car disappeared. For 2 weeks nothing happened. I started thinking maybe it was over. Perhaps I misunderstood the whole situation. Maybe I turned ordinary things into something frightening because I was tired. Then I found the photograph. It was pushed under my apartment door. No envelope, no message, just a picture. It was me, walking into the hospital, taken from across the street. On the back, written in black ink, "You should not be walking out alone." I called the police again. This time, they took it much more seriously. They asked about David. They looked into him, and eventually they found something. Not a crime, not an arrest, but an explanation. David had worked security at the hospital years earlier, before I was employed there, before I ever knew him, and during that time, another young woman who had worked night shifts had disappeared while walking to her car. The case was never solved. David always believed someone from the hospital was responsible. He never said why. He never had proof. But he had spent years watching, waiting, looking for patterns. The police brought him in, and eventually, David admitted everything. Yes, he had followed me. Yes, he watched my routine. Yes, he had taken photographs. But he said he wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to protect me, because he believed someone else was watching me too. I didn't believe him, not at first, because when someone scares you, it's hard to accept they might also be the person trying to help. But then investigators checked old security footage from the hospital, and they found something. A man appearing near the hospital entrance. Not David, someone else. Someone who had never spoken to me. Someone who had been there months before David ever started following me. That person was eventually questioned. I won't go into every detail, but the police discovered that they'd been watching several female employees, not just me. He was arrested, and for the first time in months, I slept properly. I still think about David sometimes, because the truth is uncomfortable. The person who frightened me was also the person who noticed I was in danger, but he was wrong too. He crossed a line. He watched me. He invaded my life, even if his intentions were good. Years later, I still don't like routines. I park somewhere different. I take different roads. I pay attention. Not because I'm afraid, because I learned something. The world doesn't always warn you when something is wrong. Sometimes danger looks like a stranger. Sometimes it looks like help. And sometimes, the person watching you isn't the person you should be afraid of. It's the person you never notice at all. If you survived tonight's story, leave a like and subscribe for more tales from the archive. Let me know in the comments which part stayed with you the longest. Until next time, if you see the same stranger twice, ask yourself if it's really a coincidence. And remember, the archive never forgets.